Now if we take a look at the right here, the close-up image of the pistil, we'll notice that the pollen on the stigma releases the sperm and then starts to create a pollen tube all the way down into the ovary. Now once the sperm gets into the ovary, it's going to go into the ovules and fertilize the ovules. Once the ovules are fertilized, the ovary will eventually become a fruit, and then the ovules will then turn into seeds. So by definition, any fruit that you eat has to have seeds in it. So an apple is a fruit, an orange is a fruit, a banana is a fruit, a tomato is a fruit, a cucumber is a fruit, and a pepper is a fruit. Now most of us have grown up being taught that tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers were vegetables. The difference between a fruit and a vegetable is that fruits have seeds, vegetables do not. So tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers do have seeds in them, which makes them a fruit, and they were fertilized from a flower. Now what a vegetable is an edible part of a plant. So we talked about carrots yesterday. Carrots, remember, are the taproot of that plant. So since we can eat the carrot, it's a vegetable. When you eat celery, you are eating the stem of a plant. So the celery is a vegetable. And then when you eat lettuce, you're eating the leaves of a plant. So that's the main difference between a vegetable and a fruit. Now let's take a look at the fertilization process of the flower and how it does turn into a fruit.
Mature plants produce flowers, which contain a structure called a style that has a stigma at the top and an ovary at the bottom. Within the ovary, the flower has several ovules that contain egg cells. When a grain of pollen lands on the stigma, it extends a sperm tube down the style into the ovary. The sperm tube attaches to an ovule. Sperm cells from the pollen travel down the sperm tube and fertilize the egg cell. Once each ovule within the ovary contains a fertilized egg cell, the flower's petals wither and fall away. The ovary has become a fruit, and each of the ovules has become a seed. If it lands in the proper environment, each of the seeds can grow into a new plant.
So okay, boys and girls, that's how flowers become pollinated and how the pollination of a flower can turn the ovary of a flower into a fruit. Now let's take a look at the structures of seeds for these flowering plants, which are super important because that's how new plants are made. Flowering plants have been pretty successful throughout the course of evolution because the fruits offer more protection and it helps them disperse the seeds a little better. You and I, we would eat a fruit, and after we've eaten everything, we usually leave the core with the seeds in them and we'll throw them out. Or if we're eating an orange or something like that, we'll typically spit the seeds out onto the ground. So even in that manner, you're helping disperse these seeds to grow into new plants. Other animals, they'll typically eat the entire fruit, core and seeds and all, things that you and I would normally throw out. And since seeds are undigestible, they'll pass through the digestive system of these organisms and then re-enter the world through the fecal matter of the animal. So because flowering plants have been so successful, there are actually two groups of flowering plants, and we're going to talk about them. We're going to discuss monocots and dicots and their seed characteristics. Let's take a look at monocot and dicot seeds and the structure and functions of these seeds. So first off, I would just want to concentrate on the middle section here labeled seed structure. So this is what a typical seed looks like to you and I that we normally think about when we look at and think about seeds. However, you can see that monocots here on the left have a much different look than dicots here on the right. But they do have the same structures in them. There are three main structures to a seed. First of all, there's what's called a seed coat. The seed coat is a protection for the embryo inside of the seed. As we talked about earlier in the year, is the baby form of an organism, so the embryo is the baby plant that's inside of the seed. And then lastly, we have a very, very important structure called the cotyledon. The cotyledon is the stored food in the seed. The monocots and the dicots are the two types of angiosperm seeds, and even though they do look different, they do have the same structures. So, for example, we have the embryos in the seeds. So those are the baby plants. We have the seed coat for the seeds to offer the protection, as we said. And then lastly, we have the cotyledons of the seeds. Now, the main difference between a monocot and a dicot is actually the number of cotyledons that they have. If you take a look at the word monocot and you break it down into the words mono and cot, mono means single or one, and cot is short for cotyledon. So monocots have one cotyledon. Whereas if we take a look at dicots, di means two and cots is cotyledon, dicots actually have two cotyledons, here and here, as opposed to the one cotyledon here. So an example that you're familiar with, especially with summer rolling around, of a monocot that you might eat for with dinner is corn. Corn is a monocot. However, you could also eat things like baked beans or green beans, and green beans are dicots because they do have two cotyledons. Now again, these are seeds that you are eating, so the main purpose of the seed is to germinate and turn into a new plant. So let's take a look at the different types of conditions that these seeds need and what the word germinates means. Alright, so here we have the germination of two types of seeds. We have our monocot here on the left and our dicot here on the right. But before we talk about that, what you need to know is that the word germination is the development of a plant from a seed. So as the seed sprouts and grows into a plant, that is when the seed starts to germinate. In order to get a seed to successfully germinate, you need three conditions that need to be right to get the seed to go. So first of all, you need a specific type of gas. Now, we talked about how plants need carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. Our seeds aren't photosynthesizing, so they actually need oxygen, because the development of this plant is going to require a lot of energy, so as a result, they're going to need oxygen to make that energy. So soil is usually loosely packed and has a lot of air pockets in it, so there's plenty of oxygen that can get in. Next, you need water. Obviously, water is needed for all plants, so this way they can carry out all the chemical reactions that they need. However, we do need one more condition, and a lot of kids think it's sunlight. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not the sunlight. The sun does play a part of it, but it's not sunlight. And the reason being is this. If you take a look at the seeds here, first of all, do they have any leaves on the outside? No, they don't. The embryos have the leaves, which are on the inside of the seed. Second of all, where do you put the seeds usually? You usually plant the seeds in the soil. So if you plant the seeds in the soil, the sunlight is not going to get to the seeds because it's going to be blocked by the soil. So sunlight is not what's required. However, you do need warmth. So in order to get seeds to germinate, you need to have these three conditions.
There are two kinds of germination in seeds: hypogel germination, in which the cotyledons remain under the soil and the first leaves develop from the plumule itself, as in corn, maize plant it is seen. Then the second germination is apigeal germination, in which the cotyledons come out of the ground and form first leaves, making food for the seedling. Then they dry up and fall off. So this is about the flower